So when I was in grad school at Urbana-Champaign, I remember being in an algebraic topology class, and there were maybe 15 kids in the class, and I was the only one looking like me, of course. And the professor was from Poland, and he was calling the roll, and he got to the name Hrabowski, and I raised my hand, and he went, no, no, no. And I said, this is America, yes, 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 and so I am. And so I am Freeman Hrabowski, and I'm not adopted, and I can tell you that story another day, all right? I begin with poetry. William Carlos Williams said that it's difficult to find news in poetry, and yet men die miserably every day because of a lack of what is found there. Maya Angelou said more than 2 decades ago at the installation of another US president these words: lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it, this dream, into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the image of your most public self. Sculpt it into the shape of your most private need. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face and say simply, very simply with hope, good morning. So good morning or good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon, good afternoon. How many of you have read some of Daniel Pink's books on Drive, on Whole New Mind, right? You know, the left and right brain thinking, the idea that sometimes it's great to do the kind of thing that Emily did. She was a little kooky at points. I'm going to go back and tell people, Emily, about you talking about how you taught your son about the semen and all of that at age 7, wait a minute. And Eric uses the logical way with the analysis, which is very good, you know. And so I'm seeing your group here doing something very interesting. You're using a little fun, little data, but I want you to give yourselves a hand for being both kooky and analytical. Both, please. Would you do that? I have said to a number of people here that I am so impressed with what you've founded, Eric. And what is so clear to me is there is such a need to look at ways of partnering with our public schools in this country. While I am respectful of some charter schools that have made progress, some, all right, I also know of so many friends who've started things from scratch, and 10 years later, I've seen no difference. And the fact is that the majority of our children are in public schools, and to the extent that we can build on what's there and strengthen and support what's there, we can have the biggest impact on what happens in our country. And the message I have today is that the way we think about ourselves, the language that we use, the way we interact with each other, the values that we hold will be so important. We become like those things. We become like that which we really value. I am from Baltimore, from a campus that has done really well. We have students from 150 countries. The students from the other countries, whether it is Barbados or Nigeria or Russia or China or India, tend to be far more disciplined than Americans of any race, often. And I see the kids from other countries coming in, doing extremely well. I see the kids of parents whose parents are from other countries, in some situations, doing really well. And what we've come to appreciate on our campus is the need for specificity, to not make assumptions. Peter and I had a great conversation. People always say, well, Asian Americans always do well. Well, some are doing well, some are not. Some need more support than others. Similarly with the Hispanic population, with the black population, with the white population. And I think what you know is that it is important to understand the backgrounds of the children we serve. It's important not to assume we know something about a person because they're from another country, because they look a certain way, because until you know that person's situation, whether they're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, Native American, you cannot be as effective in working with them. Now, it is significant that I'm here in your city a lot because I work over at Harvard. I work with the senior administrators from universities and in a program for new college presidents. It was so funny, Emily, when you called me a legend. What that just reinforces how old I am, quite frankly. Thanks a lot for that reaffirmation, all right? But the fact is that college presidents only last 4 or 5 years. And often the reasons are not good that they leave those positions, including a lot of emotional stress. And I tell you that because I'm constantly thinking about this question of leadership. I am on a campus, though, that has figured out how to ask good questions. And I'm going to focus on that some with you here today. I say that Baltimore is the Upper South. One day we think like people from Philadelphia, the next day we think like people from Richmond. Depends on the issue. Now, this is what we'd call definitely New England and the North and all of that. I grew up, though, in the Deep South, in Birmingham. And we from the South, from the Deep South, love stories. If I gave you a theory, you would probably go to sleep. But if I give you a story, you'll remember it. And I tell these stories all the time. 50 years ago, as Emily was saying, I was a little fat nerd loving mathematics, sitting in the back of the room. My parents kept me really involved by giving me what I wanted, and I wanted more food all the time, different kinds of food. That Big Mac had just come out, and I ate more Big Macs than anybody, all right? And when I was really good, I could eat a second one without people knowing it. So I was amazing with my math and my food. And they wanted me to hear this guy talk in the middle of the week, and I didn't want to go to church. Who wants to be in church in the middle of the week? And amazingly, I was in the back, and they allowed me to be placated with my math and some M&Ms. If you gave me some M&Ms, I could be okay while I did my math. And I'm doing it, and this guy says, if we get the children involved in this peaceful demonstration, all of America will understand that even our children understand the difference between right and wrong and want to get a good education. And I said, who is this guy? And because I was thinking, I'm tired of getting these hand-me-down books from the white kids when they finish with them. I'm tired of being in schools that are considered not as good, even though we had some good teachers. And they said his name, of course, was Martin King. Went home that night, said, I've got to go. And they said, absolutely not. And I said, you guys are hypocrites. At that time, you did not say that to your parents, I'll assure you. They go to your room, and it was a time for punishment, but they came the next day. They decided to allow me to go. And the essence of the story is this. When they told me I could go, I became very afraid because I'd seen the dogs and the fire hoses the first day. And yet I decided to go because I really did want to know what it would mean to go to a good school. And I thought I was a smart kid. I was about to go to the 10th grade. I'd skipped some grades. But to me, smart, and I talk with students about this a lot, smart had everything to do with being excited about the work, being willing to work hard, being willing to focus on the effort. Let me ask you a question. How many of you in this room consider yourselves smart? Let me see your hands. You get interested. It's good that you put them up there. I've been in some rooms where teachers are almost embarrassed to say it because it sounds like you're being arrogant. And I'm saying that we must teach our children to want to be smart if we define it that way. Willingness to work hard, willingness to focus on the work, to ask good questions. Robbie, a Nobel laureate, said that when he was growing up in New York, all of his friends' parents would ask them at the end of the day, what did you learn in school today? He said, but not my Jewish mother. My Jewish mother would say, Izzy, did you ask a good question today? And the practice of encouraging his curiosities had made him the thinker he became. And one of the points today, as we think about dealing with the opportunity gap, when we think about closing the achievement gap and having kids with the opportunities and the skills to do what they need to do, and with the dreams and the values to shape their lives, it is this notion of developing the curiosity in our kids, of getting them excited about the work itself. Well, that experience being in jail for 5 days taught me one very important lesson, and that was this, that even children at age 10, 11, or 12, middle school kids can think well. They may not be excited about the work. They may need to learn to read more critically, but they can think and can be taught to think at a level far beyond what we might imagine. And as I have worked in education now for about 40 plus years, I have constantly thought about the question, how do we excite children about learning itself? How do we give teachers the support they need when society is so quick to say what they do wrong? And most important, how do we help our society understand the nobility of education, the nobility of being a teacher? My other story involves my mother, who grew up as a little girl in rural Alabama, in Wetumpka, Alabama, below Montgomery. My dad would always say, he was from a little country town too, he would always say, boy, you're so lucky, you got somebody to take you to school every day. I got so tired of him saying, and I had to walk 5 miles to school, he was telling me every day, right? You hear those stories, right? Finally, I said, Dad, that's why your feet are so big. You had all that, to which he responded, don't you get smart with me, boy. But my mother told a story that embarrassed me, and yet I tell it all the time to CEOs of companies, to college presidents and others. She said that beginning at about age 12, she had a choice of working in a hot cotton field or going and working in a wealthy home, cleaning the house. And she wanted to see how rich people lived, rich white people, of course. And she said what was particularly distinguishing about the experience was that distinctive about the experience was that the house had a library at a time when there was no library for children of color. And the woman was kind enough to say, Maggie, when you finish your work, you can go into the library and read. And mother would do just that. And the lady said, take your book home and bring it back when you finish. And as mother read more and more, she saw herself changing. And here was the change. She said her girlfriends would say, Maggie, come on outside and play. And she said, no, I want to keep reading my book. And they would say, why would you want to keep your nose in that book? And she kept thinking, well, why is this? And then it hit her, this growing difference between herself and her girlfriends. Here was the difference. She said the more she read, the better a reader she became. And the more proficient a reader she became, the more she enjoyed the experience. And the more she enjoyed reading, the more reading she did. She said that reading allowed her to forget she was a poor little colored girl. It allowed her to dream about the possibilities. It helped her understand the subtleties of language. It helped her improve her writing skills and her thinking skills and her ability to speak with confidence. And she was transformed in the experience. She said the problem with her girlfriends was they never read enough so that it became less than a painful experience. It was always, they would always push the book away and say, that's not interesting. Well, if it's hard to read, if you're not getting much out of it, of course it's not interesting. It was at that point she knew exactly what she wanted to do for the rest of her life, to be a teacher. And she wanted to be a teacher of English, of language and literature, because she saw how reading and writing and thinking had transformed her life. And even before she went off, and she wanted to go to college. And what's amazing is she did just that. She found a way and she worked her way through school, and she was this teacher of English. Now, I will tell you, I'd be in the house and my mother would be quoting Zora Neale Hurston. Their eyes were watching God, right? The book, Ships at a Distance Have Every Man's Wish on Board. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing, until the watcher turns his head away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men, and she would say, and women. And it was always so powerful because she was making a point to me, and all the times she quoted poetry or prose. Well, the point she was making this time was that there is this glaring difference between people whose dreams become reality and people whose dreams are, in the words of Langston Hughes, forever deferred. And she always said that difference was education. That it is the education people get that will either allow them to continue to dream and to have the values and the skills to reach the goal, to fulfill the dream, or somehow the dreams just keep going further and further, farther and farther away. And she always said, we teachers make the difference. We teach the doctors and the lawyers, and all of them come through us. And there was something about that experience for me that said, I want to be a part of that enterprise we call education. I want to think about what it takes to get a child to be transformed by language. Now, years later, something came out called the New Math. Anybody ever heard of the New Math? Anybody old enough? Most of you are so young, you wouldn't know the New Math. You really wouldn't know the New Math. But the New Math was this, particularly after Sputnik, and it was so clear that the Russians were moving ahead, and everybody knew that we had to do more in this country in math and science than Americans. And the problem was that the universities started having these programs for teachers in the New Math, but universities, as some of you know, can be quite condescending and can assume they know. We in universities, and I've been in universities 40 years, can often, when we get to K through 12, want to tell people what to do. What we didn't understand was we, the professors, didn't really know children. We may have known mathematical concepts, but we didn't know how to work with children. We had not understood and worked with children who were 12 or 13 and behavior issues and discipline issues and how you motivate kids. And so rather than having the partnerships too often, we simply talked over people, and the teachers were mortified. They were not understanding the concepts and set theory and everything else, but they were just not made to feel like they were professionals working in this practice. Now, that's my opinion, but I will tell you this. The fact is today, most Americans still don't like math. We know that. Now, watch this. How many of you in this room love to read? Let me see your hands if you love to read. The fact is that many of you love to read. All of you can read. Some of you just like reading the sports page or this or that or the other. When you really love to read, you read books all the time, right? But it is a part of the American approach to education that it would be almost embarrassing for educated Americans not to say they love to read. You do read, you can read. Many of you love to read. Now let me see something. And I want a truthful answer. You know where I'm going, all right? How many of you love mathematics, really love mathematics? This is a really nerdy group. I am very impressed. I will tell you, I come from a campus of nerds. We are very proud. You know, we are very proud of the fact that 40-some% of my students go immediately to grad and professional school. We had a dozen UMBC graduates, half minority, half white, interviewed at the Harvard Medical School in 1 year. That year, a few years ago, we had more graduates of UMBC in the Harvard Medical School, including with MD, PhDs, than any campus in the country other than Harvard College. Give me a big hand for that. Really nice. And just to let you know, we really are a campus of nerds. My basketball team can read well and they graduate. Give me a really big hand for that. And I'll tell you, the message that I want you to hear me saying this, and I say it without apology. I say it at the White House. I say it in companies, that the point of UMBC is this. You don't have to be rich to be brilliant. Give me a big hand for that idea. You don't have to be rich to be brilliant. And that's what I want you to think about with the children you serve. You know, if you are a teacher, if you are a volunteer, the essence of our work is to help kids understand all things are possible with that hard work. There's something to be said about understanding the relationship between professionals, teachers, and staff and others who work with children on the one hand, and what children can accomplish. Now, I'm going to do something that's a little different. I'm going to ask you a number of questions. How much time do you think anyone, an educated person, can concentrate on hearing somebody else talk? At most, they will say 20 minutes. One of the real challenges in America, whether talking about in K through 12 or in colleges and universities, is that often our model of lecturing is for 40 minutes, 45, 50 minutes, not realizing that if I talk to you much longer than this without breaking it up, you're thinking about lunchtime while I'm talking. You're smiling and looking at me, but your mind is on many other things. I know that, all right? That nobody can just focus on somebody talking on and on and on. If you don't break it up and have opportunities for exchange, somehow something is left. And so one of the reasons we've gotten this #1 award for innovation for 4 years in a row is that we have redesigned courses. For example, look at our website at the Chemistry Discovery Center. Almost half of our students of all races are in science and engineering. And the key is that we've rethought many things. #1, that Meyerhoff program that Emily mentioned really focuses on something she said in her talk. And that is this, that people learn more effectively in groups. We can get so much more done when you work with a sense of community. If you think about what community means, I got a note from one of my students. I have a number of students who email me, text me all the time, and they're giving me ideas and questioning things on campus. And this student said, Doc, my first year at UMBC, I did really well, but I've lost that sense of motivation. And I'm trying to figure out what went wrong. He says, how do you stay motivated every day? He said, he says, my parents are just upset because I got A's and B's the first semester. Second semester, I was really cool. I started getting B's and C's, and I am really not ready to focus and work as I need to. What do I need to do? And I was so fascinated by his authenticity that I said, I'm going to do something, if it's okay with you. I'm going to send your question to a number of my other mentees and colleagues, and we're going to start a conversation. I said, because any human being, I don't care how successful, will have periods when he or she is pumped, and other times when you said, do I really want to do this? Or when I'm not really feeling this today, right? I wanted him to know he was not alone. that we all go through times of doubting ourselves, of figuring out where are we in this work, or of being tired or frustrated or discouraged, or quite frankly, not knowing why we're not really into it. And what I was saying to him as we had this conversation, as he was saying, I don't know if I trust people to know what I'm thinking, I had to get him to that point of allowing me to do it. I said, well, I don't have to use your name, but I said, if I use your name, it'll give you a chance to meet some more people, and it really will be good. Got him to that point, and so I watched the conversation through emails throughout the night. And it was the most amazing experience when somebody at 2 a.m. is writing him and saying they're up study and the summer, and he writes them back, and I'm waking up and I'm seeing this, and he's saying, how in the hell could you be up at 2 o'clock doing some work? And this person said, I have no choice. I do it for others. And this morning I wrote back to talk about the young woman from Jamaica who said to some Americans, we have these focus groups all the time. We're always building community among students. We had focus groups of people from different countries, from Baltimore, from DC, from the New York area, and I was asking them about their study habits, and a young woman from Jamaica said this. She said, I don't mean to insult my American friends. She said, but it seems to me that for working and middle-class kids who go to college, freshman year means grade 13. It's just what you do. She said, and so it's like the icing on the cake. She said, but for me, if I don't excel, my younger brothers and sisters may not eat. And she had tears, and she said, it's the bread of life. Education is the bread. And I got goosebumps thinking about this child, this 19-year-old telling me that my education is the very bread of life because I don't just do it for me to make money. I've got to help those who have not been as fortunate as I have. I've got to become a doctor and go back and help in Jamaica and Kingston. And I want my younger brothers and sisters to see what I did to succeed. You see, there was that greater purpose there. And my kids from America, they thought about it, and it was a wonderful experience. And that came up last night in these conversations. Why do you go to college? What is the reason you decide to become a teacher? You know, it's not just for salary, because you can do other things to make more money. We know that. It has to do with the fact that you decided in this room, whether you are a teacher or helping out as in apprenticeship programs or a volunteer, it is that you're saying that life takes on meaning as we find ways to give support to other people. And I want you to think about who you are as an educator, if you're in business or whatever. One of the things I like about ELT and what you guys do with citizen schools is that you understand that there's a need for more time for people who are not from very privileged environments, to make sure we get them more opportunities to think about the work, to solve math problems, to read, to be in a community of people, that you appreciate that people can do better if they learn how to ask good questions, how to listen, how to synthesize. These are all the things in the Common Core standards that are very important. You know that. And for me, as someone who has been in math, but who's been influenced so substantially by a mother in literature, you will appreciate this, it is wanting them to understand the relationship between language skills and math and science. I want you to think about that. And a lot of you are either math teachers or you enjoy math. One of the things on our campus that you'll appreciate is that we actually have, a part of our innovation, we have 100 companies, biotech and IT companies, started by my students and faculty. 40 cybersecurity companies and bioengineering, and with at least 20% of the companies with women CEOs and a number of people of color in at least 15%, and students work in those companies all the time. And a part of our model of innovation in STEM, but beyond STEM really, is using the national infrastructure in our region to get kids involved earlier. And I've got more and more high school kids who come into us in the next year or two, taking courses already, but working at the National Security Agency, working on security clearances now. I love telling people we've got hundreds of undergraduates who are already spies. Students love hearing that, because once you get that security clearance, the first thing they want to tell me is, Doc, can't tell you what I'm working on, I'd have to kill you. They're always telling me that, right? To which I respond, yeah, boy, but I knew that before you were born, all right? But the fact is that the more we can get students involved in seeing how whatever they're doing in school connects to the real world, and that's what you do, the more relevant the work is, and it helps so much. You know, as a math teacher, I've always worked with math teachers saying 2 or 3 things. One, when the kid in geometry says, well, where am I going to use that? Don't just tell them you're going to use it because it's going to help you to think better, because the kid's going to say, I can already think well. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be in your boring class. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be more than that. And humor is a part of all of this. We've got to learn that. Because how many of you know that so many kids are bored in school? Tell the truth. Bored. That's why I love that when both Eric and Emma were talking, because they wanted you to get that we can get more done productively when we're not so gloomy and when we bring humor to it, because it adds to, quite frankly, what's possible. I'm always telling people, get over it. Don't be so serious. I mean, we can be really great with a lot of gravitas and still have the humor. It's so important because kids get tired of people looking like they're so important, right? You know, I enjoy getting in a third grade class and getting on the floor and working on a math problem. I love doing that because it's at the essence of education. And I want you to think about how you approach the reading and language skills and the English and the math and the science. And I want to argue that we need people who can talk across those disciplines. I don't need you to know how to solve the math problem. I need you to be interested in the math problem. My books on raising smart black boys and girls focus on the fact that a lot of these parents are not educated, but they learn just to show interest in the work. To ask the question, how many problems did you have to solve? 10. Well, I see you tried to do 7. What about the other 3? I don't know how to solve them. Well, what's the question you have? Write the question down. You know, find out what the teacher says tomorrow. Let me know the next day. The interest on the part of teachers, on the part of beyond that class, on the part of staff members, on the part of professionals working with kids can help that child become more interested in the work. Now, a lot of you like math, so I've got to give you a math problem. It's one I give all over the country. And I use it to make a lot of points. It's a 6th grade math problem, appropriate here, and it's a college board problem, and it was in the Baltimore Sun because they were saying most teachers had some difficulty with it. I like it because the answer is not necessarily readily there. You've got to think about it. Now, you should know whenever I give a math problem, I get goosebumps. Goosebumps. So I was in this little 3rd grade inner city class in the past months, and I got the best question. A little girl came up to me, a little Hispanic girl. She came over and she said, she looked at my arm, and I said, what are you doing? She said, how many goosebumps do you get on your arm when you solve a math problem, when you're working on math? I never thought about the question. If I tell kids you get goosebumps, and somebody might think, well, how many goosebumps do you get, right? How was that a loss? I said, you got me. I don't know. I really don't know. Amen. But she started trying to count, trying to find them, first of all, right? So here's my point. Here's the problem. 29 children are in a class. Goosebumps. 20 have dogs. 15 have cats. How many have both a dog and a cat? Now, I love this problem for many reasons. It's like thinking on different levels. Number 1, I immediately know there are 3 groups of people in this room, the same 3 groups I'll find in any classroom. You've got the kids, former kids who got A's in math, my math teachers and others going, all right, bring it on. Bring it on. All right? And even though you're acting like you're really cool, you are dying to get the answer because you want to show people just how smart you are. I know you are. I can see some of you. You all out of your seat. Ready. All right, you're ready. You're ready to get up and say, of course, the answer is blah, blah, blah. It's obvious, right? Got that kind, right? I was always that little nerdy kind, just like that. Then on the other end, you got some saying, why in the hell would he give us a math problem? Why would he be trying to embarrass me like that? Wait a minute. And I got to look like I'm trying to do it when I know I can't do it. I see you. I know who you are. I know exactly how you look at it. Some go, that's me. But then you got 40, 50% in the middle saying, I'll try it, but I never was but so good in math. Right? I'll be trying it, right? Now, the next point is this. Because we were all educated with the same approach, every one of you thought, I must solve this problem myself. Think about it. Everybody started going, oh, God, let me start working. Some trying because you like math, but I'm saying we tend to think individualistically. It's just what we've been taught to do. Because most of us were taught in school, you're cheating if you look at somebody else's paper. Right? And I always love looking at body language in classes. The kid who thinks he or she is so smart would do like this. They were making sure you don't look at that paper, right? The kid who's real cool, knows it or no, he kind of leans back. Right? You know exactly what I'm saying. You got all that body language going on, right? Because I saw some of you all looking at somebody else's paper. I saw you in there, right? Maybe I can put it down so it looks like I know what I'm talking about, right? I tell you that because it is the case in math, but it's the case in life, and it's the case in English that you got those three groups. Kids who've already had some success, so they're ready and pumped. Kids who have not had success and they are just disengaged, a word you talk about, engagement. And those in the middle who are on that fence. What you don't know is that my campus does a lot in social entrepreneurship. So we have literally been taking care of about 500 boys of color, and at least 20% are poor white kids who are first-time offenders between the ages of 8 and 15, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We make sure they're up in the morning, in school during the day. We bring many on campus. We have other places in the Baltimore region and Prince George's County towards D.C. We tutor them, we mentor them, we take them home, we make sure they stay at home at night, we get them back up the next day. Why? Because in the better situation, the mother is working. But what child who's 11, 12, or 14 can be at home at night unsupervised and not get into trouble, right? In the worst situation, she's on drugs, and we're working to work on that issue. And we've done it now for as long as the Mile program, since 1988. We've been able to keep it through Republican and Democratic governors because of something that Eric said earlier, evaluation. When you can show that something works, when you can show that spending $6,000 per child for a year rather than $40,000 to have them in an institution. These are all first-time offenders, remember. You're saving the state money, and we can show that statistically the child is more likely to continue in school, to not be killed, to not get back into that system, and to finish high school. Will they come to UMBC? No, they won't have that kind of background, but I can get them to a community college, I can get them into a training program, and in 2 or 3 cases they've been so extraordinary we've even been able to move them eventually to the university. But this is hundreds at a time. And what I learn as my colleagues work with them, as our students work with them, is that the more we can involve them in hands-on experiences, the kind of things you're doing, the more I can take the little kids who used to sell drugs and get them into a business, working at the baseball. We actually have a fruit fancy kind of stand where they're working to go and market and to get people to come, and they're using the money and everything, get them away from selling drugs, get them into something constructive. And the more they can see how their math skills can help them in some of that, for example, or their ability to speak well as they go up trying to get customers, the more engaged they become. But the other side is this. I see children every day who are just not accustomed to listening to authority and who will defy you every time. You know, I'm talking with a group of 15 of the little boys on campus and 3 in the back, and I said, sons, come on down front, and they look at me like I'm crazy. And I want to go yank them by the head, getting ready to get myself sued and fired, right? You know, I want to say, boy, bring your little butt down here. You know you want to take them, but you know you cannot touch them, right? And you have, and this is what I mean when I say people don't understand what teachers go through. They don't understand that you've got to use all kinds of strategies to be effective in getting the kid to do what the kid needs to do. Because the easiest thing people can do is to put the people out of the classroom. That's the easiest thing. You put them out the classroom, and we notice, especially with boys of color, that you put them out, they're away, and all of a sudden, they get behind. It's going to be worse when they come back. So the question is, how do you keep them there, get them engaged, get them, and you know, I'll tell you just one approach, even with the math problem that I did it with some of the little 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and it was clear to me that some of those who were looking at me with the most evil look really did have an understanding of the problem. And they began to ask questions. And at one point, I said to one of the little mean-acting little boy, I said, boy, you really are precocious. And of course, he said, what'd that mean? First of all, right? He didn't know whether I was insulting him or said something good. And when I said, well, it means you're closer to being a man or something, he got really excited about that. And you go through this period, and what comes through as I got them talking with each other about the problems, this was, and amazingly, how they begin to feed off of each other. If there were one piece of wisdom we have learned from Meyerhoff and from the Choice program, it is that you can help children to be better by getting that little rowdy 13-year-old to help that 8-year-old out. When you give him that sense of responsibility, or a young girl who's having some problems and I need you to help me with somebody, it's amazing how children can rise to the occasion. That's what I want to see you do. I mean, and the question we have to always ask is, how can we be creative in showing connections and using professionals who come in to talk and saying to people, you can do this one day, and showing them how what they're doing in school relates to what happens in real life. You know, there are 2 types of people in the world. There are people who can suck every ounce of energy out of your body because they're so negative. You know who they are in your settings. And the other type will be people who can elevate people. And they're saying, even when times are tough, we can get through this. And the question for each of us is every day, which category do we fall in? Because if you're depressed or something happens bad at home, before you know it, you come to work and people can tell you're looking mean or you're looking upset, right? And I would argue that it's this nobility of education. It is this purpose of helping those children that can make all the difference in the world. Now, let me ask you this question. How many of you think you have the answer to that math problem right now? You see the hands, all right? Now, let me say it another way. Now, watch this. Suppose I told you if somebody is correct, I will give him or her $1,000. You should have seen how your faces changed all of a sudden. Wait a minute now. I didn't take it seriously before, but wait a minute. So let me see now. Everybody who thinks you've got the answer, stand up for me. Let me see you. Stand up for me. Everybody who thinks they have the answer, stand up. Stand up. All right, give them all a hand. First of all, keep standing. Lady, I see, Keep standing, keep standing. Keep standing. Good, good. This is good. Okay, keep standing, keep standing, keep standing, keep standing. This is a math problem right here. Now, another question I'm going to have is, how many of you must be wrong for me to not worry about your getting $1,000 from me? There's another question for you. And the third point is this. There's only one caveat to the $1,000 reward. If you're wrong, you must give me $500. How many of you are so sure that you're willing to give me $500? Because let me tell you, I will take your money now. Let me tell you, college presidents will take your money. I have no shame. All right? So if you're willing to bet me, all right, 1,000 versus the 500, keep standing. Let me see. Give them a big round of applause. Everybody have a seat. I'm not giving you a dime, but have a seat. What was I trying to do, though? I was saying, how can we be creative and do things to have children engaged, excited, thinking about the possibilities? You know, I want to have time for just a question or two. So I want to end with one story. I'll never forget when my wife and I convinced my mother to move from Birmingham to Baltimore. She didn't want to do it. She wanted to be at her church. We said, we've got churches, you'll be okay. And she came up, and all of a sudden we realized that this brilliant woman who could quote Emily Dickinson and Shakespeare had been hiding from us the fact that she had developed dementia. She had ways of covering it up on the phone, but it was so clear when she got there because I realized that she didn't even know who I was, and I'm an only child. She knew I was familiar. And she had gotten in charming ways of just not mentioning her name or things. And I'll never forget the day we were sitting out on the back porch and she said, looking at the trees, and she said, I know the end is near. You never want to hear your mother say something like that. But I asked her the question that is ineluctable. It's this: well, if that's what you feel, what's important to you now? What's important? Because when somebody knows they're to that point, you get the essence of the person, whatever's been really important. And she looked at me with the sweetest smile and she said, what's important? She said, relationships. She said, and I'm trying not to cry at the time because, who wants to hear that your mama's feeling like she's about to die? And she said, my relationship with God. And she looked at me and she said to me what she said all of her life: hold on to your faith. You'll be okay. And then she said, my relationship with my husband, he's a wonderful man. She'd forgotten my daddy had died 20 years before. And then she shocked me. Now, remember, I told you I was an only child. All of a sudden, she looked at me and she said, I have a son. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking she's telling me she had a kid when she was a teenager, and she's now just telling me, I'm like your 7-year-old son, Emily. I've got to worry. All of a sudden, my students will say TMI, too much information. I was angry. I went from grief to being pissed, academically speaking. Wait a minute. I'm looking like, what the hell are you talking about? Wait a minute. I'm thinking, don't you drop this on me. I'm about a brother now at my age and die. Leave this mess for me to clean up. Don't you do me like that. I'm mean. I'm looking real angry. And she says, he's a college president. Thank God she was talking about me. But then she gave me a gift that I now give to you. Profound gift. She said, but I now understand. Teachers touch eternity through their students. Teachers touch eternity through their students. Whatever I had to give, my sense of right and wrong, my lust for learning, my belief that those children were out of the projects were special. I gave it to my children, and I will always live through them. I went back and spoke in Birmingham a few years ago, and it was just so powerful. I finished, and all these people came up and they said, your mother didn't teach me to read, she taught me to love to read. Your mother came to the projects and told my grandmama and mama, send your daughter to college. And they said, no, she's got to get a job. And she insisted. And because she insisted that I get to college and fill out the financial aid forms and got me to college, I became a teacher. My younger brothers and sisters saw how well I was doing. I was able to pull them on. And we all did so well. We could pull my mama and my grandmama out of the projects because one teacher believed in me. Now, that's what you can do. Whether you are an apprentice helping out in that school, whether you are a staff member or a teacher, you never know when you are transforming lives, and that is the nobility of education. I challenge you to watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. I tell my students every day, your character has everything to do with who you are when you don't think anybody can see you, when your mother's not there. There's your character. So thoughts become words. Words become actions. Actions become habits. Habits become character. Watch your character. It becomes your destiny. Dreams and values. Everybody in this room, you're all so special, and you can be even better. Thank you all very much. Really sweet. Wow.